10, and we are live. So the Teflon Tales, same time, same day. So Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Today, I have a probably not probably the youngest guest on the show so far. I have Joshua. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you. So first, I need to attribute how you and I met, thanks to a post by an amazing leader, Naomi Buckwalter, which who you know really well. I got to know her more recently, and
hmm
she had posted this, and I'm actually going to read the post out and then start the conversation. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so Joshua was about to graduate from Year Up Greater Philadelphia and was looking for job opportunities. He reached out to me for a conversation about what it was like to be in cybersecurity. Our meeting was supposed to be 30 minutes. We spoke for 2 hours. Long story short, I fell in love with Joshua's ambition, maturity, intelligence, and potential. I offered him an internship in my company. Joshua was an excellent intern. No job was too big or too small for him. He showed up early, he stayed late, he took on special projects. He ended up staying at my company for over a year, and that's not all. We'll get to where you are today in a bit, but that's the genesis of the post. And then as of this morning, I think there were over 100 comments and over 1,000 plus likes. But the point I want to get to is, uh, at that age, knowing you want to get into cyber, reaching out with audacity to somebody brand new, and then talking through that, and she ended up becoming your mentor. What was that whole experience like?
Yeah. So I think that the fact that it was cyber. So first, actually, shout out to Naomi Buckwalter, really good mentor that I just had like while I was at Energage. And yeah, I think the thing was really just to determine where I wanted to be. At first, like she mentioned, our conversation was about cybersecurity, but not to go too far into where I am today, but I'm now a software developer. So you can see how like it shifted, but I wouldn't have knew that had I not started somewhere.
Yeah, so talk about that piece, because I think that's one of the big attributes. Again, going back to the Teflon tales, the attributes of Teflon, which is really what my guests exemplify. And that's
Mhm.
what you're doing today, which is getting hot on something, cooling down, and talk about getting hot and cooling down, right? Because sometimes you think you're set up for something and you keep at it, and sometimes years go by, and then you reach quote unquote middle age like me, and you say, "Man, what was I doing?" Right? So how did that pivot happen? So you actually realized, okay, this is really what I want to do, but you figured out something else, and so you actually cool something down in order to pick something else up. So how did that transition happen? And I mean, at such a young age for you.
Yeah, so it was actually pretty immediate. When I looked at the people like Naomi who are sort of in the field, I'm like, they don't really need me, so let me just do something else. It wasn't literally like that, but you get what I'm saying. I was looking at software security, and I guess really just to go back a little bit, like how I actually met Naomi. Um, when I was in Year Up, they gave us an assignment to go, I believe, like talk to, I think it was like 30 individuals, and maybe just get like some small piece of feedback, and that's it. And that was the assignment. At first, I was like, well, 30 people is a lot. Like now I have to first know 30 people. Like
Yeah.
sometimes in your own social circle, you barely know like X amount of people. So I was set out on to do that, but then I added a little twist to that assignment. Because at first I was like, it's good to get like some feedback and stuff like that, but I wanted to know a little more. Like I have a resume and stuff at this point, and I didn't really get any feedback on that. And I wanted to see what other people feel about it. So it was actually a little bit of a chain. I went to a networking event, so being proactive. And at that networking event, I just connected with a bunch of different, like it was IT managers and maybe HR people. And at first I was like, there was this one lady named Jess, and she was an HR manager. And after I was talking with her, I'm like, oh, well, I probably won't be able to get much out of this conversation initially because, like she's not IT. But she's like, I know someone who is IT. And I was like, all right, great. And like, lo and behold, I had to do a little bit of email, and she connected me with Naomi. And that was when we had our 30-minute conversation, and we thought, 30 minutes, but it ended up being 2 hours because Naomi had a lot to say, but it was also perfect timing because she was working from home. I think it was like maybe from like a minor injury or something like that. It was like totally perfect timing. So I was really glad. And with that, then she just saw, I guess, potential in me. And it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like the moment I left, this conversation with her, she was like, oh, I'm hiring you. It was
Yeah.
more like I see your potential. I think maybe she even thought about it. I wonder what she thought, but clearly it was enough for her to like approach me. And on the last day of my graduation, I didn't really have nowhere to go. I knew with the internship that I had, it wasn't really the place where I wanted to be. It wasn't like the end point. And right as before, I believe it was after I graduated and I walked off the stage, we just happened to connect somewhere in the auditorium, and she handed me a card and said, "Hey, check out this opportunity. If you really want it, just give the number a call on there, and that's the way we'll go." And I was like, like that was the way. Like all the way up until the last day, didn't know what was going to happen, but it was just so fortunate. Quite honestly, a blessing.
So again, going back to what she remembers of you, right? Which is really no job is too big or too small. Showing up early, staying up late, taking on. So and again, going back to the Teflon analogy, right? Sometimes people end up taking on too much, right? But at some point, you're trying to get to know stuff, so you have to get hot really quickly. How was that experience of kind of jumping in and really kind of digging in and learning brand new stuff for the first time?
Scary, like most things, because when I first, I guess, started my position at Accenture, the main question was, can I do it? And I'm one of the most unsure people that I know. Like, I wasn't really sure if I had the ability to do it, but I was glad that someone else saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see myself. So I just have to credit that to Naomi, and then also the team that, brought me on. So I started small, and I think one of the things that helps me learn best is by just asking questions. And so just question after question, and not really being satisfied until like I learned enough or where maybe I can teach somebody else or repeat back to them what they said to me. I feel like that's the way I like kept myself like at a pretty hot pace.
Got it. So talking about something else is the nonprofit, right? A national nonprofit. And again, So, and sometimes, again, people get caught up in doing one thing. Oh, I need to kind of put all my effort behind that. But sometimes you need to actually do different things, right? To actually have, to be able to get energy from. So talk about the nonprofit, and also not just you have a nonprofit, but you were also the emerging leader of the year for the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. So talk about that.
Right. So actually, I guess a little typo there, but that Emerging Leader of the Year award actually comes from the League of American Bicyclists, which is also a national organization. Yeah. And I guess all these bicycle organizations have like bicycle in them in some way. Even the organization I'm part of like has bicycle in its name. It's a National Youth Bike Council. So bike. But yeah, I got that, I guess, as just it was another instance of someone saw potential and they decided to speak up about it. And I think that that's great. And it wouldn't have came around had I not been proactive in creating like a national nonprofit or something like that. Currently it sits at like, I believe like maybe 7 or 8 members wide in different states and stuff like that. It's fully youth led. So that means no one under the age of like 24 is currently leading it. And it's been built up fully from like youth power and the ideas and everything that we're building around it, like even the ideology and the ways that we want to grow and stuff like that, all from youth power. And I think that that speaks to young people's abilities to be able to do stuff. And again, years ago, if I asked myself, would I be able to run at like a nonprofit period? It doesn't have to be national, it doesn't have to be local. No. Didn't think that that's something that I had the power to do, but I'm really passionate about like youth development. I think that's one of the things that really drove me to like show up, show out peers. This is the kind of thing that we have the power to be able to do, even as young professionals.
So I'm going to come back to that. First, to shout out to Hema, another past guest, an amazing podcast and great questions. Forget about the questions. It's the answers that are riveting right now. So again, thanks Hema for the shout out.
Thank you.
So going back to what you just said, right, which is sometimes you don't know what you're capable of until you try, right? So how did Joshua get past that mental block, the imposter syndrome? I mean, did you have a community? Was it your family? Was it friends? I mean, how did you kind of get back? Okay, so you can do this. Or was it your own inner voice?
I think it depends on what the obstacle was. Like for the obstacle of getting the job, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I was going to go even after graduation without a job. Like I was determined, like I want to get what I want. So I feel like that was myself. But receiving that job, that was someone else that helped me out. Something I would have never got had someone else not helped me. In terms of like nonprofit, I would have to say a little bit of family, a lot of just being immersed in what I'm passionate about, like seeing other young people benefit from being able to ride a bicycle or just putting a tool in their hand, giving them something way better to do than a lot of other things that young people could be doing. I don't have to even, that speaks for itself. Just keeps me passionate about like keeping me passionate and like self-motivated to continue to like push and be like, all right, this is something that I know, like this is what I want to do. This is going to have an effect. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it'll eventually have an effect. And then, small like wins along the way just keep me motivated. And someone told me, celebrate those small wins, because once you achieve something once, sometimes it's not as special the second time. So like, I really like to celebrate those small wins with the group. And we just, enjoy it.
No, that's okay. Talking about enjoyment. So, and this caught my attention as I was going through the 100+ comments and the 1,000+ likes for that post that Naomi did. And it what I was looking for was a pattern, right? And two things emerged. One was the impact you've had on the people in your lives. And I remember this one person that talked about your Friday joke time that used to actually make people laugh on Friday. So I'm going to get back to that. But also your new employer, right? Accenture and people from Accenture welcoming you with open arms. So how did that make you feel, just to see the impression that you left behind, also the excitement of where you're getting to, and how would you want to play that forward?
Yeah, so that Friday joke thing, I told that joke on a Friday before leaving the office, and it made a lot of people laugh. I feel like that was what started that whole thing off. It ended up being really great because then I could say a bunch of bad jokes and people would laugh at it. That was nice. And then like I think Accenture in itself, the vibe that I'm getting thus far is like it's a really welcoming community, and I appreciate that, because when I was making the switch, I was like, is this really what I want to do? Like, trust me, I asked a lot of questions like I normally did. I'm like, well, how's my manager going to define team? Like, those are the kinds of things that really matter to me. If I'm doing work for like specific people, who is it affecting? How does it affect them? All besides like money aside, like how is what I'm doing meaningful to anybody? Because if I'm gonna live every day doing it, I would want to make sure I'm being meaningful in some way.
Yeah.
And those are things I monitored. And just with the vibe that I'm getting, like it's very opening. And I guess my story also helped inspire the people that I'm joining, which also prompted some of the conversations. And since then, I've actually had conversations with different people that I wouldn't have had, had that post not been made. It just opened up a lot. It really did blow up.
Yeah. So going back to something when you and I were chatting yesterday about, hey, like your hesitancy about talking about yourself, right? And my recommendation to you was, hey, Joshua, it's not about you, right? It's about, and you've talked about this a few times, but how powerful is it for you to realize, just seeing the trail that you have blazed and the ability to actually become a Naomi, you becoming a Naomi like to 200 other students out there, as well as young adults, saying, hey, if Joshua can do it, so can I. So how has that inspired you to kind of keep pushing the boundary some more?
Yeah, so I guess we even talked about this a little bit too, because I'm not the type of person that normally like toots their own horn kind of thing. Yeah. I would have to say I have a lot of great achievements, but it's just like living in the moment, just embracing those experiences that you have, and then like I said, celebrating the win. That's what helped me just acknowledge myself. But then when it came to, does that thing motivate or inspire anybody else, that was not nothing I really experienced before. Like this post sort of opened that door up to me. Like I didn't know that there was a whole group of people that actually would be able to get something out of my story, maybe mimic something that I did. That would be great if they would be able to learn from that and then excel their career in some way. That was totally new to me, like a totally new concept. And I like it, because if I'm doing something great that someone else can also do, that's also great. And we got a lot of great people in the world, like we're in a good place.
Yeah. So again, talking about how you plan to amplify your voice right now. And clearly, I mean, working for Accenture and talking about that is a great thing. Coming on the show hopefully gets other people also to connect with you. But one of the things that is an important piece of the Teflon is the ability to remain non-sticky, right? And we touched about it briefly in your journey with cybersecurity, but I want to expand the footprint of saying, especially with youth, there are so many different choices today, right? Hundreds and thousands of choices people could do, and sometimes you end up doing a little bit of everything. But the to a little bit of everything also takes up a lot of energy, and sometimes you end up in the situation where you frankly feel burnt out and you haven't shown any progress. So how do you manage that dance, if you will, of getting hard really quickly, but at the same time realizing, hey, this is not for me, and walking away from something you've actually invested time in so that you don't feel burnt out?
I think it was like a balance between just being honest with what you're trying to get at the end of the day, while
Mhm.
also like investing enough in yourself as well. Like with my job, I ended up wearing a lot of hats, and that was fine with me because that's what I like to do. But then I realized like maybe there's a few hats that maybe that should not be on my head. So I had to evaluate, is that the kind of work that I want to carry on, or can I still leverage this opportunity to do something else? And in most cases, I leverage the opportunity to do something else. I'm a workaholic a little bit, so I'm not going to turn down work. But in terms of the Teflon tells, you do have to cool down. So I agree, like workaholic, but still pull back.
Okay, so the aspect of the community piece of what we were talking about over here, right, which is really the impact you want to see have on others. And sometimes this is self-fulfilling, right? You see somebody make a comment like we saw in Naomi's post, or you see when you're getting an award and people feel inspired. So what are the new areas? Again, social media is clearly one. I mean, it could be LinkedIn, could be other things. But what have you embarked upon brand new? So again, turning on a brand new stove, if you will, that you feel is going to help reach more ears. I mean, inspire more people to be more Teflon-like in their lives.
Yeah, I'll ask that question. You don't mind just give me 1 second?
Sure. So while we wait for Joshua, we have another couple of questions for him. As you can see, at age 21, he is quite an inspiration. And as far once we finish the session, I'll actually post what Naomi had. So I was just telling the viewers as you left that, hey, your the post that you and I are referring to constantly, we're going to make sure that gets posted as part of the videos. People can go take a look at what we're talking about up here. Yeah, just go. And again, repeating the question is really the ability to inspire a larger community means you have to reach a different audience through different means. And that means learning new stuff and coming up with new ways to reach a bigger audience. What do you have in mind?
What do I have in mind to continue to, like, I guess, grow my network?
Yeah, grow your network for, like, again, it's an important piece that you realized at this young age, growing your network for the purpose of getting others to push boundaries versus personal self goals, right? So and again, so that's why I didn't even mention that. What can another person do and learn from Joshua's progress thus far? And for that, you have to reach different audiences. What other ways and tools do you have in mind?
Well, I'll keep using LinkedIn for sure.
And you have a great role model in Naomi.
Yeah, literally.
She's amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, yeah.
You're telling me. I think I'll continue to use LinkedIn. Also, reaching out to those of them who you don't normally think would give you the answer that you think. Like, I think a lot of us really judge a book by its cover, and likewise, we, I guess, make assumptions about ourselves that others don't see. Like, we're like, I guess, what is it, imposter syndrome? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are two things that I did have. To like an extent, I'm always like, well, maybe I'm not going to get what I want, or maybe this is not going to give me, what I'm looking for. But, just making the ask, I made a lot of asks, and I feel like had I not made all those asks, I wouldn't get better at making asks. And you need to get better at doing something. So always refine a skill. And that was one thing that I definitely did. So
yeah, so two questions, right? And then we'll wrap up. This one is particularly resonant with me, and I'm sure it is. Again, going back to so Naomi had commented on this when I said, "Hey, we're going live with you today." Oh, it's like, yes, go. And I told her, it's like, hey, your name is going to come up at least a half a dozen times. We already crossed that boundary. But she does something which is unique and which is so needed in this world, which is being vulnerable, right? And being vulnerable in public, again, for the express reason of getting others to acknowledge, because unless you acknowledge, you can't move on, right? And
exactly.
the ability. So again, talk a little bit. I mean, you obviously have the generation that you're part of, right? And how have you seen not just your own development, but also your comrades around you to, number one, acknowledge publicly, right? It's so there's self-awareness, which allows you to move forward, but then there is awareness that you want to spread widely so others are permission to acknowledge their own failings and be able to move forward. How has that helped you in your own journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because by no means am I perfect, which is another one of those things that had me like, that was one of the things that I thought about. Like, I'm like, well, maybe by some odds, like like all this came by like grace, And I do acknowledge a lot of this what I was blessed with, but I think one of those things that I'm quote unquote not perfect in or need to work on is like my self-confidence and just believing like, I have the ability to make that change just like anybody else has the ability to make that change. If I'm capable and I'm not the only person stopping myself, then there really shouldn't be anything else that's stopping me, especially with like the internet now. You have a wider range of resources and a lot just sitting at your feet, and not to intimidate, but to put you in a better place, hopefully, if you use it the right way. And another one of those things is like, I'm not sure if you heard of my background just now, but like there's tons and tons of background noise that I have. And it's a good thing because it also keeps me like, had I not had that, then maybe I would be working like 24/7. So it's good to have a little bit of background noise, but it's also fine to like start refining like, what is too much background noise and in what ways can you help with that? And so it's always like a middle ground that I'm always looking for. So those things that just keep me like on my feet and always, trying to perfect something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering about the background noise, but you're right. I think a lot of it is also something that you got to learn from everything, right? And sometimes you kind of take things literally and say, hey, this is out to stump me. So final question, right? And this is to a wide demographic. And it's clearly the youth that the generation that you represent, but also people who've not done what you did, which is experiment early on, reach out to people, figure out stuff, turn stuff down, and then move on, and feel that they are stuck in something that, quote unquote, if they're honest with themselves, they don't want to be. And yet, the longer you are doing something, the deeper you go, you have just one stop, you don't know how to turn on. So what advice do you want to give to, again, this wide range of people, number one, who are afraid to make a move because, hey, I have lots of time in my hand because I'm young, I can do lots of things, but I'm going to go down this path, as well as somebody who's mid-career, just like being single trick pony, but not happy where they are. So what can they start doing? Your advice.
Well, now my voice has some worth to it, so here we go. Never thought I'd be here. But I think the thing that I would suggest or advise is two things. One, take time to learn about whatever it is. Like a lot of people have like the I don't really have interests kind of thing. But there's probably something that interests you. And if it's something that you don't know about, then just just explore and see other things. You'll eventually run into something, if you ask me. And then the other portion is once you find that thing, invest time into sort of becoming an expert about it just a little bit, because like that also makes your conversations a lot more interesting. And then this should have been the first thing, but for a lot of people that might have the interest and already invested into it, like, what now? I have everything in my backyard, I could do whatever. And if like, maybe even if they're like looking for a specific job, then that's where I started saying, just start asking questions. Ask questions to different people. Specifically the people that you want to be around. Like if you want to be like eventually one day work in a lab and you're not talking to someone who works in a lab, how do you actually know you want to work in a lab?
Yeah.
Like these are the kinds of things that I started doing. So I was like, I sort of want to cybersecurity. Let me ask a cybersecurity person. But now I understand maybe it's software development that I thought was cybersecurity. Had the wrong word, but had the right path, So if you're not asking questions, if you're not looking and being proactive, you might be like putting a detriment in the way. And plus, I personally am the believer with how far I've gotten. Like there are tons of people that out there that are willing to help, and also tons that are not willing to help. You're gonna find both if you keep looking.
Yeah. That's very, very true. Again, ask questions, experiment, and keep at. I mean, get good at it. Again, it's just exemplifying the whole Teflon analogy. Again, thanks for your time. I know it's been amazing. I'm going to keep watching you and get inspired by you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you.
Thanks.